In this video, I'm going to go over how to set up mock API to do mock CRUD operations in a basic JavaScript project. So the first step, once you've signed up for mock API, is to come up to your projects and you'll open a project here. I'm going to name this one names because that is all we're going to cover in this is saving names to it. Now, once you've got that created, you're going to go inside of it and you'll want to create a new resource. Now, we're going to name this resource users, and I'm going to delete the extra information that's down here, and we will change this to name. Now, if you're using Faker.js, you can put in account name or song name or a full name, which is what I'm going to use here. And then you'll click create. Now, a couple things about mock API. The first thing to keep in mind about mock API is that if you select a different number of users in this bar, it will overwrite any data that's in there to create the new users. So let's say we have Sonia Ringer here and Kim Krona, just for an example. When I go back over here and I click that I want 8 and I click back over here, those 2 users are gone. It is an entirely new set. So make sure if you're putting in your own data that you back up that data and you keep it separate from in here. The other thing about using mock API is that if you want to generate some data, you can come over to ChatGPT or even Claude or Google's Gemini, and you can type in, I need a list of names using a string number as an ID starting with 1. The names need to be the 2003 LA Lakers starting lineup. My properties will only have the ID and name. This is for mock API. And then when I hit enter, it will generate me some data like this. Now, occasionally you'll get this kind of response back. And this is not exactly what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, put this in an array and a code block. What that does is they'll take that exact same data and they'll throw it in the format that we need it for mock API. So now I can take this data, copy it, come over to data over here, and just paste this in. And if everything looks right when it goes in, when you click update, it'll accept it. And then you can see that we're loading that data exactly how we expect it. Now, for our purposes, we're going to go back to just some randomly generated data, but I thought that it was useful to know that you can set this up differently. The only catch is when you go in and if you like set all of your properties, you will need to add those properties in mock API over here to where you can do your put operations or you can do your create operations. Now, if you don't set it up that way, it's still going to have the fields that you don't include. It'll just add those properties to a file. So let's say we have this set up where we have Kobe Bryant as the number 1 name. If we added a position field to that, mock API is not going to validate to make sure that there's not a position in here. So it'll add one and he'll have one, but the rest of your files won't. If that's not a big deal in your project, you don't really have to worry about it, but it is something to be aware of. So now that we have this set up, I should be able to click on this link up here. And if you've got an extension that will show the JSON in formatted form, it'll look like this. Otherwise, you'll get this string at the top. Now, this is the data that's coming back from it. That's the data that we're going to use in our project. Now, this address that is being accessed is the address that you're going to want to do your get operation from. So we'll move over to the project that I have set up here. And at the beginning up here, we're going to set up a async and await to get our users. And I'm going to declare my URL as a variable up here, const endpoint equals, and then we'll paste that address from mock API in. I'll set up my const to get my response. It'll fetch from the endpoint. Then I'm going to assign the data that comes back to a variable and have it converted to JSON data. Now, when it does this return, I'm going to have it draw out the data in my table over here. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say render users. And for this render users function, we're not going to do it as an async. We're just going to do a standard function here. And then I will get my users, only I'm just going to receive users here. And from there, I will say let my table equal the ID of my table over here. So it's getting my element on the DOM and declaring it. And then we're going to go through and for each user, we're going to let it create a table row, then table data. We'll have it add this class in. Then we're going to have it add the inner HTML of the name, append the table data to the row, and then the row to the table. And then from there, we can close this off. Now, with that much of the project set up already, we can go back over and look at this project running, and it should be loading in. Now, if it's not, we can always go back and start troubleshooting. Now, part of the reason it's not rendering yet is because we didn't call our function. So we would say render users and send that data through. So now we should be getting something over here. Still not getting anything, so I'm going to inspect, see if we have any issues. It's connecting, and we'll reload, and I'm not getting anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my render users, and right off the bat, I'm going to put in console log those users, because I want to see that they're getting back and when they're getting back. So now we will reload over here, and we're still not getting it. And at this point, I realize I didn't call get users. So we can call get users here. And now let's see what we're getting. Our users show up. So I have 7 different user files here. They each have an ID, they each have a name, and I want to set this up to where I can post a new name to the API. So I'll come over here and I'm going to create a new function. So we're going to say function add user API, just so that it makes it clear that this user is going to be added to the API. And we're going to pass in that name here. And then after name, we're going to do our fetch method with the endpoint and do a post. Our header type will be application JSON. And you're going to make sure that you use this JSON.stringify so that it turns your JSON format into that string that the URL is going to need to accept the data. Then we get the response back, convert it to JSON, and then it's going to console log out the success or the error based off whether or not this works. Now that this function's created, I can go up here to my event listener where I use the button to click and add my data to the table. And right after I add the data to the table, I can send the data to the API. Now, at the end of this API call, I can, if I want, choose to reload the page. At that point, I may have a situation where my data doubles on the page if I'm not clearing it out. So let's give it a test and see what we get. So test has been added. We get a success over here. And if I reload, it's in there. So with this setup, I have successfully been able to add to what my mock API is holding. It has an ID of 8, and I'm able to use all of this. Now, if you're wanting to do other CRUD operations, you can go over to help code it. And in our JavaScript pages, under the CRUD operations, we have the fetch calls to get one item, to post, to put, or to delete. And you can go through and actually see an example of how to set that delete up. And you're just going to pass in the particular item that you're wanting to delete. It would be after the endpoint here. And then you'll be ready to get that going. Or if you're just wanting to pull a specific user with a user ID, you'd set it up like this. And you can actually copy these and use them, as well as see line by line what is happening. So feel free to step over to helpcodeit.com and take a peek at those. Now, if you're wanting to use Ajax or Axios, we also have those listed out over here. So you just click on the one you're wanting to use. We've got an example there for you to put together, and you can use that as a template to kind of get you started. Hopefully, this shows you how to set up a mock API, how to use mock API, and how to implement it in your project.